Hey everyone, every time I wanted to know what a certain part is on my bike, I would look it up on Google or on YouTube and wouldn't really find what I needed. Every video that does explain what parts are on the bike are typically for the handlebars and talking about the different controls or maybe where the shifter is and the brakes. But what about the other parts? Here's a video that answers those questions. Alright, I'm here with my 2020 Harley Davidson Iron 883. So we're going to go over the different parts of the bike. Not going to do any kind of internals, but just walking around the bike, front, back, left, right, and just pointing out some of the major parts and what they are, what they're called, what they're for. Alright, so we're going to start here on the handlebars. On the left and the right side here, we're going to have what's called the control clusters. And we're going to go ahead and start with the right side. So right here, we're going to have the power/kill switch. So right now it's in the kill position, which means there's no power to the bike. We're going to go ahead and flip that switch on. Right now, you would hear the bike make some noises. The fuel pumps are turning on. We're going to see some lights over here. And now there is power to the bike. The engine's not running, but there is power to the bike. So continuing with this right control cluster here, right next to this power and kill switch, we're going to have this switch here. On the top is what's going to be the hazards. So if we go ahead and turn it on, we're going to go ahead and see here that the left and right turn signals are on at the same time. Just like in a car, those are our hazard lights. So if you're pulled over on the side of the road or anything like that, any kind of emergency, you can go ahead and click that. For Harley Davidson, at least for this bike, I know if you do happen to get into some kind of accident or if you tip over the bike, those hazards will turn on automatically. Turning that back off, right under the hazard light, we're going to have the power switch. So the engine start switch. So this is what's actually going to start the bike. I will start it here just so we can hear it, but then I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. So great, as we can hear, bike is on. The kill switch I told you about, which is the top, we're going to go ahead and click that. And we're going to see that power was cut off to the bike completely. I'm going to put it back on just so we have some power. Right at the bottom of this control cluster, we're going to see the right turn signal. So clicking this will turn that turn signal on. You can see it here in the LED cluster. Also, of course, the turn signal lights in the front and the back of the bike will be flashing on the right side. Go ahead and turn that off. If we switch over to the left side of the bike, we're going to see the left control cluster here. Going right back to that bottom, we're going to see the left turn signal. So again, we see that here. Some people like it, some people don't, but what I like about modern Harleys is that these turn signals are auto-canceling based on your turn. So if you do a turn where there's some sort of lean so that the bike knows that you're turning, once you straighten up from that turn, those turn signals will turn off automatically, which I think is great. Going back to the left side, the left cluster here, this first switch here, the bottom is going to be the horn. There we go. The top is going to cycle through our display here. So our display, we can see right now it says 0. If we click it, we're going to see total mileage on the bike. As you can see, my bike is still fairly new. Click it again, we're going to see trip A and trip B. Again, very similar to what you would see in a car. And then the time. And then lastly, my favorite, and typically what I keep my gauge at, is again the speed. What's cool about this is it's not only speed, it also shows you RPMs. Which is pretty useful. Going back to the left cluster here, on the right, we're going to have the high beams. So the top, if you click it, turns on the high beams. It's kind of hard to see in daylight, but there is a blue light here now showing that your high beams are on. You click the bottom here to turn the high beams off. And what's pretty cool is, again, like in a car, you can click the bottom and let it go, and it'll flash the high beams in case you need to get anyone's attention. Of course, again, the handlebars, you have the left hand grip, the right hand grip. As everyone knows, in a motorcycle, the left hand grip is also the throttle. So as you spin this back, this is how you accelerate on the bike. Right above each hand grip, we have the mirrors, something that I'm hoping to actually change pretty soon and put them under, which just looks better and it's more useful. I don't know if you can see, but my shoulders are in the mirror, which is not helpful at all. Right under these mirrors, we have our levers. On the left side here, we have the clutch lever. So pulling this in disconnects the clutch, and letting it out connects the clutch again. On the right side here, we have the front brake. So pulling this in activates the front brake. Something, of course, you want to be careful with. Never Just pull it in right away, slowly, progressively, right? And then to the right of that, connected to this brake lever, is going to be the master cylinder for your brake fluid. In the middle here, I have a quad lock, which is a phone mount, not something that comes stock with the bike, but just something that I have. And this cable is a USB power cable, so this way under here I can actually plug in my phone and charge it while I'm riding. Right in the middle we have the gauge, I guess that's called. Again, we saw some of the things on there, analog speed, and then right under it we have the neutral light, oil pressure light, turn signals, high beam light. Cool, so we're gonna get off the bike now, and we're gonna go to the left side of the bike. Now on the left side of the bike we have a lot of things here. So starting down here, I have this big thing right here, is called an engine guard or crash guard. This is not something that comes stock with the bike. This is something that I have put on. It basically protects your bike from slow speed crashes, not really crashes, but more of tip overs. For example, you can see mine's actually scratched up. I did tip over my bike, it sucked. But yeah, so I'll have that. I have a cup holder on it, again not stock with the bike. I have some bottled water in it. Going to the front here, we have the front tire. We have the brake rotor right here, which is the silver thing that I probably shouldn't have touched, but luckily it's cool. Right on that we have the calipers with the pistons and connected to the brake line. Your typical standard brake system on any kind of vehicle with wheels. Again, going right here, this big beautiful thing in the middle is the engine. This is a V-twin Evolution engine that's on my Harley Sportster. So these are the two cylinders that make up the engine. Unlike cars, or even honestly most motorcycles nowadays, you'll see that this engine here has what's called fins. And the reason why is because most traditional Harleys are air-cooled. So there's no coolant system. So it's air-cooled, and I mean technically oil-cooled as well, but these fins are so that air can pass over it and help cool off the engine. In between these bolt headers here, we're going to see these two cables. These two cables are the spark plug cables, and right under here, under this rubber, is the spark plug for each cylinder. So pretty cool, kind of right out in the open. On top of this we have the head. In between there we have a fuel line, and in that fuel line it kind of splits with injectors to go into each cylinder. Right under here, if you can see it, tucked away behind the front cylinder, is the oil filter. So during a normal oil change, that's going to be something that you would change as well. That helps filter the oil and make sure that the oil that's being sprayed around the engine is nice and clean and can do its job. Right under the engine we have what's called the primary. The primary is I believe named for the primary drive. So what's in here is kind of like the first stage of your transmission. So basically the engine here connects to the crank, which is in here, and there is a double wide chain inside the primary that connects the engine to the clutch, and then from the clutch into the transmission, which is in the back of it. So this silver cap here is going to be called the clutch inspection cover, or what's typically known on the streets is a derby cover. So this is what you would remove to see your clutch right underneath. And then for people who don't know, so basically the clutch is what again allows you to connect or disconnect the engine power over to the back wheel. So again, this is called a primary, and it holds the connection between the engine and the transmission. Here we have what's the shift lever. So this is how you shift. As typical in a motorcycle, you go down into first gear, and then you go up to second, third, fourth, fifth gear, which is where my motorcycle stops. But of course, some of the bigger bikes, you then have a sixth gear as well. And then again, some basics here, but kickstand and the left foot peg. This little contraption right here is the engine, it's the battery cover. So under here is where your battery is going to be. For this kind of bike, you'll see some kind of wires and cables coming out of here. This one in particular is the battery tender cable, which I have plugged into my phone charger system now. But if you did need to charge up your battery, trickle charge it, or something like that, this is what you would use that's plugged directly into that battery. Right under this I have the swing arm bag. Again, something that comes on the bike, but something that I bought because I needed a tiny bit of storage and I think it looks good. Right behind that we're going to have our left shock, part of our suspension system. License plate, of course. Rear fender, back tire. Here is the rear rotor. So unlike some of the bigger bikes, my bike only has a single rotor in the front and the back for braking. The caliper is up in there. Going around to the back of the bike, again, we'll see license plate, turn signals. I told you before, left turn signal, right turn signal are connected to those buttons we pressed earlier. And now we're going to go to the right side of the bike. So on the left side, I mentioned the primary and what was the primary drive. On the left side of the bike, we have what's called the secondary drive. So in that primary, we mentioned we had the clutch. The clutch is connected to transmission. Over here is the other side of that transmission. And on the other side of it, we have what's Harleys are typically known for is a belt driven system. So this is a belt right here that connects the transmission to the rear tire. And that's how the bike moves and gets its power. So that's the belt system. This container here is the oil tank. So here's this little pop-up thing here is how you can check your oil level, make sure that's good, how you fill it for oil, and all the oil is up here, which then gets pumped into the engine. On Harley Sportsters specifically, the engine has its own oil, and then the primary case as well as the transmission shares a second oil. So there's only 2 oils in this bike, 2 oils to change, versus some of the larger Harleys which will have 3, in which case the primary and the transmission are separated and have separate oils. Down here we're also going to see the rear brake cylinder, master brake cylinder for the brakes. This bike does have ABS, so there are a bit more cables and complexity into the brake system here. We also have the stock exhaust system here, so that's these 2 pipes here. Basically it's a bare metal exhaust on the inside with some black shield on it to kind of add to the blacked out look of this bike. Say blacked out, but you also see that there's still a lot of silver on here. Again, on the other side of this engine here we have the air filter. So this is an air filter cover, and the air filter is inside of it, and the opening is right here. So here's where the bike breathes. Here's where it takes in that air, cleans it up, and then distributes it to the engine so that the engine can produce power. Yeah, and the last thing will be the fuel tank, which is up here, one of the largest parts of the bike, I guess, aside from the engine itself. And this is the fuel cap, which is where you will fill up the fuel tank. 3.3 gallon tank on this specific bike. I hope that was helpful. This is an overview of the Iron 883.